Hello, and welcome to the Kemetic How-To Guide for Egyptian Pagan and Kemetic practitioners. I'm your host, Sharon. Now, last episode we started talking about the 42 Declarations of Innocence, being a selection from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which the Egyptians believed these were moral statements they believed that they would be judged upon. And these are something that people look to nowadays, especially if you're trying to apply Kemetic belief and practice into your own life. Well, how would this determine your day-to-day conduct? We covered Declarations 1 through 21 last episode. So now we're picking up with Declaration 22 and going through the different deities that we would be, or demigods that we would be addressing, to say that we have not done things. O demolisher, who comes forth from Kasu, I have not transgressed. In this case, there was a similar one that we discussed last time that was to trespass. And we're going with trespasses in, go onto somebody else's property. As I joked, I promise I haven't gone to Area 51. The ultimate in off-limits, territory. In this case, transgressed means to stray from the path, you can think of it as not taking into account what your actions do to affect other people or how it makes you look as a person. I think a lot of people, the whole thing, and it harm none, do what you will. You could be doing something that isn't technically harming anybody, but it doesn't make you look any better as a person either. That's a very difficult thing, and that's why I think, I respect the Wiccan read, but I think the way people interpret it sometimes is a little too lax, in my personal opinion. So going on to 23. O disturber, who comes forth from Werit, I have not been hot-tempered. That's one that would probably get a lot of us, and even I have to watch out for that one, because I've certainly been accused of having a temper. The Egyptians had this idea of a hot mouth, a hot person, and this was somebody who, started fights and caused trouble, and this was kind of their social negative archetype. And the silent man, was their wise man, their socially upstanding person, who was the counterpoint to the hot person. So here you would be saying that you have not been the hot mouth, and it's funny, they use the words a hot mouth, a hot person, and on the internet, what do you have? Flame wars. A lot of similarity there, I think. So there are lots of ways that would apply nowadays. What would Yehudi think of flame wars? Be an interesting discussion. I'm sure there'd be a lot of threads about that one. O child, who comes forth from the nome of Unu, I have not closed my ears to the words of truth. This is a really profound one to me, because, of course, there's a difference between to hear someone, okay, I hear what you're saying, but are you listening to the words? If someone is telling you something that you know is true, but you refuse to hear it, that's what this is talking about. O foreteller, who comes forth from Wenes, I have not quarreled with anyone. Here again, this is something that would give a lot of us pause. How many of us have quarreled either face-to-face or on the internet? Again, trolling. What would Osiris have to say about trolls? So, 26. O you of Bastet, who comes forth from the sanctuary, I have not caused any to weep. Now there's variations on this one because of the words that it uses. Seremi, or Serem. Digital Egypt says, I have not turned an eye. Merriam-Lichtheim's translation says, I have not winked. But this word is so close to, the word to make someone weep, or to cause to weep. That's the translation that I'm going with. It's actually the one that Budge used. And in this case, I think he was on the ball. Because imagine, you're standing, and your merit is being judged before the gods, unless there was an expression, to turn an eye that had some particular meaning, then to say I have not caused anyone to weep, I haven't made someone cry with what I did or what I said, that's a pretty profound statement. O backward-faced, who comes forth from the pit, I have not molested a child. Now, I'll admit, this is a little bit of my own input into this one. Digital Egypt says, I have not defiled or debauched. Merriam-Lichtime says, I have not copulated with a boy. And Faulkner says, I have neither misconducted myself nor copulated with a boy. So obviously we're talking about sexual misconduct and boys are involved. They probably didn't say girls because, well, unfortunately back then, as soon as you hit puberty, you were of eligible age. They didn't have the same issues with age of consent. But today we do. So if you were applying this in a modern context, the meaning would probably be, if you died tomorrow and you were standing in front of Osiris, you would probably, do well to say, I have not molested a child. Unless, of course, you have, then you have other issues. O flame-footed, who comes forth from the dusk, I have not been dishonest. Fairly straightforward one. O dark one, who comes forth from the darkness, I have not slandered. And I'm thinking of flame wars past long ago with other people. Slander is to speak untruths about someone. Libel is when it's in print. But either way, that is something that, the Egyptians considered reprehensible. Because you're spreading untruth. O offering bringer, who comes forth from Sais, I have not been violent. 31. O Lord of faces, who comes forth from Nejephet, I have not been impatient with anyone. Boy, how many of us would, get nailed on that one? 32. O accuser, who comes forth from Junet, I have not transgressed against a deity, a notcher. What's interesting is Faulkner gives, I have not washed out the picture of the god. And Digital Egypt says, I have not broken rules of purity. So, there's a little bit of room for interpretation in that one, but the general sense is you have not done something to offend a deity. So, that's the meaning we're going to go with on that one. O horned one, who comes forth from Zati, I have not multiplied words upon words. Here's one that, again, they're using an expression that the Egyptians probably understood what it meant. It may have been, like some of the things that we say, you can't take it literally how it means. And so the translations go, I have not been voluble in speech. Lichtime has, I have not babbled. I think that multiplied words upon words means, I haven't spoken just to hear myself talk. Because how many times do we see this, or, now that everybody's going to clickety-clack, how many people just type and they, get diarrhea at the keyboard is what some people call it, where, I again, thinking of someone, that I used to be friends with, many, many, many years ago, she would, when she was adamant about a point, she would go on and she would try to think of everything that she could and just try to get, she was just typing to be able to read her own thoughts. And so people who are just trying, they're not making a point and then moving on. That, I think, is something that the Egyptians, they weren't too keen on that. Remember, they liked their social ideal was the silent person. Not meaning that you never talked, but that when you talked, when you said something, you had something pertinent to say and didn't just go on and on. 34. O Nefertum, who comes forth from Memphis, Hatkapatah, I have not done wrong, nor have I witnessed evil doing. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. What's interesting about this is, I have not witnessed evil doing. This is saying that you haven't seen something going on and done nothing to stop it. And, I can think of some instances where there were people who were beaten or, bullied or things like that, and people taped it and then they posted it on Facebook or whatever. What about all those people who were standing around and watching that going on and said nothing, did nothing, passed the video on to their friends and got a chuckle out of it. What would they have to say to Nefertum about that? That's just my 2 cents on it. O timeless one who comes forth from Jaddu, I have not conspired against the state. Literally, this was, I have not conjured against the king. I have not worked magic against the king. Which, obviously, he was the head of state. He was the representative of Horus, and he was a quasi-divine figure in his own right. So naturally, they wouldn't have considered it cool if you tried to work magic against him. And you can read about the harem conspiracy, where there were people in the harem of Ramesses III who tried to do just that, and they were executed. So, O willful one who comes forth from Jabbu, I have not fouled the waters. O watery one who comes forth from Nun, I have not raised my voice. Here again, a lot of us would get nailed on that one. The Egyptians, there in certain places it was a bad idea to shout and to make a ruckus. Elsewhere in the Book of the Dead, they talk about these different settlements within the fields of peace within the underworld, where the description says, there is no shouting there, because this was a place of peace. So they would have considered it very bad form if you were in a temple or sacred space to raise your voice. O commander of humankind who comes forth from his shrine, I have not conjured against a god or a goddess, a nutcher. Again, fairly self-explanatory. O benefactor who comes forth from Gem, I have not been arrogant. Again, this is kind of the opposite of the silent man, the ideal person in ancient Egypt was humble and patient, and didn't ramble, and was not arrogant. O Neheb cow who comes forth from the city, I have not discriminated for my own betterment. Meaning, of course, I haven't made a decision on something just because it would benefit me. And this is the kind of thing, if you consider that it was the wealthy, the upper classes that would be reading this, these were the educated people who often had positions in government. So this would be talking specifically to them and saying, I was a fair official and I did not make decisions about the public good just based on my own interests. And again, how often would that catch people today? O high-headed who comes forth from the cavern, I have not made myself wealthy from another's property. And again, what I find so interesting about these is these are things that could directly apply to what goes on in our own daily lives today. That's the beautiful thing about this. But 42, the last one. O captive serpent who comes forth from the silent land, being the cemetery, I have not blasphemed the god of my town. If you consider that pretty much every town or settlement had some particular patron deity. Sometimes it was an incarnation or a version of a major deity like Horus. There were several local variations of Horus. Isis, and especially in Greek and Roman times, Isis tended to blend with other deities, and so in one area you had Isis Renenutet, and so on. But each town had its own patron or patroness, matron, and you had to pay respect to them. Whether you worshiped them directly or not, you at least paid them homage because that was the master or mistress of the town that you lived in or that you were visiting. So that's the meaning of that. Now, a question that I've seen is, well, if a lot of us would get nailed on these things, and back then, it would be wrong to think that the ancient Egyptians were any more or less flawed than we were. It's not like these were the heirs of Atlantis who lived in light and contemplation their whole lives. No, come on, they were people just like us. They screwed up just like us. So what did they do? Well, they probably made offerings and did things to make amends, and I put a conclusion in this, which hopefully in another few weeks this will be ready and you could buy this from Lulu, and you can read all of these with further explanation. But there actually is a chapter in the Book of the Dead that is called Chapter for Removing Anger from the Heart of the God. So if you wanted to make amends to a deity, that chapter may have been somewhere involved. And it says, please accept this offering, a propitiation offering, to make amends, that you may live on it and that I may live on it. So this expressed a mutual relationship. I've offended you. Please take this and let us both be better for it. So, that's something each of us would have probably our own ways of applying that, but hopefully this gives you some, a starting point. And again, reading it is one, me reading it is one thing, but being able to put it in your hands is another. So I'm, hoping to have that, very shortly. So hopefully this will give you something for your own Kemetic or Egyptian pagan practice. So for the Kemetic How-To Guide, this is Sharon wishing you Senebti.